Let's take a look at what you're doing this week. We are in week 4, so we're doing module 4, which looks at managing captive populations in terms of their genetic viability. If we look at some of the learning materials this week, you have a video. This video will go over the calculations you're going to need for your assignment. And you also have reading. If you look at the blue chapters, these are actually chapters that we also looked at last week. So it's not new information this week, but you might be using some information from last week's reading to do your assignments for this week. And then you also have a species survival plan for red pandas that allows you to look at an actual species survival plan. In your first discussion for this week, you're going to think about the population and the mean kinship table that we've looked at in the past. You're going to write a persuasive letter to the zoo to let them know why it's important to breed animals with others outside of their organization. You want to be talking a little bit about genetic diversity and how increasing the base for which you pull your animals will be beneficial to that species in the long run. That's in your initial post, which is due on Thursday. Your response post, you are going to reply back to 2 of your peers, pretending that you are a zoo employee, you've received this letter, and then what do you find that's convincing about their letter, and what concerns or questions do you have about their letter. In your week 1 assignment, you are going to do some calculations on growth phase. It goes over some information here, so you've also got this information in the video. It's also written out here. It's asking you to answer these questions. In part 1, you're answering these 3 questions. You're going to do some calculations. You're going to answer some questions about that. You can see how these calculations are done up here, also in that video. Make sure that you also address the questions. Not only are you doing the calculations and showing your work when you do the calculations, you're also answering questions about how would you interpret those numbers that you are calculating. If you scroll way down, you have part 2 of the assignment. You're now looking at doing some more calculations here on Galapagos tortoises and interpreting that information. The grading rubric is down below the assignment. Your last assignment for week 4 is a gallery discussion. In the gallery discussion, you don't have to reply to other students. You may, if you see something that they post and you would like to give them feedback, but it's not required as part of your grade. You're designing a brochure or a poster that will help engage the public. You're trying to get the public's buy-in on the species that you're proposing for your zoo and providing information about that species and why it's important that we work on preserving the species. Introduce the species. What is it that is threatening that species? Why do we have it on the endangered species list? What is the importance of captive populations when we try to preserve species? What is your plan for preserving the species? What are some of the genetic issues? And then anything else that you think might be relevant to that. Put together a little brochure as it says up here. You can do this a lot of different ways. You can use Google Slides, you can use Adobe. PowerPoint is really easy to use when you want to put graphics and images and text together. You can create a slide. You can make that slide large like a poster size. Any way that you want to do it is fine, but you want it to be graphic in nature in addition to providing this information. It's also asking you to include a peer-reviewed source. So remember, a peer-reviewed source is one that is coming from a scientific journal and has been peer-reviewed. Now, for the purposes of this class, we will consider a species survival plan as a primary source. In many cases, it may or may not be, depending on where you're publishing, but for this course, we will consider that to be a primary. But textbooks, websites, many of the other types of documents that we see, like brochures from Fish and Wildlife, typically are not considered primary sources. We will include the species survival plan in that because there are data there that are being presented. If it has data in it and it's original data for that particular report, we consider that to be a primary source. Remember, when you do your citations, you want to make sure that you cite both in the text where you're using information from other sources and then have an in citation, and make sure that's done in proper APA format. Please, when you submit this brochure, make sure that you save it as either a PDF or a doc. Don't do a shared Google document because sometimes those do not open correctly. Make sure you take the actual document and convert it again either to a PDF or a Word doc and then upload that into the Dropbox. So that's everything you're doing this week. If you have any questions about any of the assignments, please let me know. Have a great week.